Sidney. First question. Sir Philip Sidney dash, an eminent Elizabethan poet, courtier and literary critic, holds a distinctive position in the history of English literary criticism. Second question. Dash is widely acknowledged as one of the first significant pieces of literary criticism in English language. The defense of poetry. Third question. What is the name of the work of criticism written by Sidney? An apology for poetry or the defense of poetry. It was written in approximately 1580 and first published in 1595 after his death. Fourth question. Sidney's important works. Astrophel and Stella, The Defense of Poesy, The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. Fifth question. What are the 4 charges against poetry by Stephen Gosson? The 4 charges against poetry. It is waste of time to study poetry. Poetry is mother of lies. Poetry is the nurse of abuse. Plato had banished poets from his ideal republic. Sixth question. In 1579 appeared a treatise entitled The School of Abuse, written by Dash, Stephen Gosson. Seventh question. The School of Abuse was dedicated to Dash, Sir Philip Sidney. Eighth question. Who provoked Sidney to write an apology for poetry? Gosson's dedication. Sidney gives a reply to all these charges against poetry and also writes exhaustively on the nature and functions of poetry. Ninth question. Why does Sidney condemn tragic comedy in An Apology for Poetry? It expresses outright the sort of distaste this yoking together of opposite could provoke. 10th question. Sidney asserts that poetry is dash, monarch of the arts, because of its ability to unite the best part of philosophy and history in vivid, pleasing and memorable examples. 11th question. Sir Philip Sidney says poetry is an art of imitation. He gets this idea from dash, Aristotle. 12th question. Sidney in his work An Apology for Poetry uses the Greek term misomosoi to mean dash, poet haters. 13th question. Sidney in his work An Apology for Poetry says that we should dash to crown poets, plant more laurels. 14th question. Sidney's The England's first critical text during Renaissance, An Apology for Poetry is also called dash, The Defense of Poetry. 15th question. A Defense of Poetry, an essay that acknowledged the poet of the world, was written by dash, P.B. Shelley. 16th question. In the beginning of the essay, Sidney brings an anecdote with an exordium. What is exordium? Introduction. 17th question. Which work of Sidney Shakespeare borrowed and produced Gloucester as the subplot of King Lear? Arcadia. 18th question. What is the value of Sidney's criticism? To Sidney, it is an art of imitation for a specific purpose. It imitated to teach and delight. 19th question. What are the type of poetry according to Sidney? religious poetry, philosophical poetry. 20th question. An apology for poetry showcases Sir Philip Sidney's dash deep understanding of classical and humanist traditions while advocating for enduring importance of poetry as a form of expression, communication and moral instructions.